With this brief episode, our presenters, Sean, Zaniel, Tudor, and myself, Kurt, will relate the events and impacts of the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II, depicted by Julia Otsuka with George Orwell's portrayal of a dystopian state apparatus, which is evident in the book with the unjust, state-sanctioned imprisonment at the base of the plot. Throughout this story, using the perspectives of all of the protagonists, there are interactions with this all-powerful entity, which is the U.S. government. Firstly, George Orwell's portrayal of a dystopian state will be defined so that its government connections with the emperor was divine are clear. An Orwellian portrayal of government is one in which the state has control over all aspects of citizens' lives, often in a way unknown to the citizens. It is a state that is untouchable, and the citizen is powerless in front of it. If it does something inhumane, it will be able to prevent most citizens, both affected and unaffected, from truly viewing it as inhumane. This sort of depiction is present through Otsuka's work, starting with the beginning of the story. At the very start of the novel, the state is shown to have strict control over its citizens in an absurd manner. The mother is alerted of her family's nearing internment through a simple poster she sees on the street. She describes that it hung in the window of Woolworths. It hung by the entrance to the YMCA. It was stapled to the door of the municipal court and nailed at eye level to every telephone pole along University Avenue. Page 1. The author uses this quote at the very start of the book to set a feeling of absurdity that continues throughout the book with the contrast of the mundanity of the mother running errands, walking in front of different neighborhood buildings, and reading a mere piece of paper with the incredibly heavy implications that are having her and her family being removed from their home and taken to a camp far away for a yet undetermined amount of time. The mother's response to this horrifying situation is one that is ignorant of the government's implication in it.
As she starts packing to go to the internment camp, she shows that she hasn't yet understood the state's injustice and hasn't assigned fault to it. She looks at an old painting she has to remove of peasants working tirelessly to cultivate a field. It bothered her, the way those peasants were forever bent over that endless field of wheat. "Look up," she wanted to say to them. "Look up, look up." The mother can recognize the tyranny that befalls the peasants in a painting, having to slave away because of their social class, which is imposed by the state governing them. This quote is included in the book as a form of irony that illustrates a successful, so to say, Orwellian state apparatus, one in which not even a victim of their tyranny truly recognizes them as the perpetrators of it. The Orwellian state can survive if the masses it rules against it. These masses are not viewed as humans. This is displayed clearly when the family is on the train towards the camps, and the daughter's attire is described. Pinned to her collar was an identification number, and around her throat she wore a faded silk scarf. The state's disregard to its citizens' personhood is shown blatantly, with internment prisoners being identified with numbers instead of their names or anything really more personable. This is a symbol that appears throughout the rest of Otsuka's book as a recurring reminder of the state's regard to its people. Speaking again about masses, another factor for an Orwellian state's survival is when it comes to persecuting a certain group of its citizens. The unaffected, or the masses, also need to be complacent. The U.S. government in the book is shown to be a successful Orwellian state, and so there is evidence of the general populace's compliancy. Further into the train ride, a soldier overseeing the train car says, "Miss," he said, shades down," and the daughter describing his voice as soft and low that he did not smile, but she knew that he would if he could. The author included this description of the soldier, a member of the general populace, to further prove the population's subordinates by portraying the soldier as a man who seemed kind and humane although aiding this inhumane act sanctioned by the government. His character is contradicted in compliance to the government proving its control. The author, having proved the population's compliance, then illustrates an even more eerie, classically Orwellian display of compliance. After the family had settled into the internment camp life, the son's activities are described. He played Chinese checkers. He roamed through the barracks with the other boys in his block, playing cops and robbers and war. Kill the Nazis. Kill the Japs. The propaganda of the state has extended so far into society that the youth in an internment camp for Japanese Americans are chanting to kill their ethnic origin, using a word that even at the time was clearly derogated. In mere children's games, government propaganda can be observed, and in this case, the children playing them are the ones who are in the internment camp strictly because of the anti-Japanese sentiment they are espousing through their chant.
The government is totalitarian to a degree in which they can insert themselves into daily activities, and, as will be shown now, they can also remove things and ideas that they do not favor out of daily activities. One of these daily activities is the family speaking with their father, which they can only do through letters as he is held captive in a different facility from theirs. Every few days, letters arrived, tattered and torn, from Lordsburg, New Mexico. Sometimes entire sentences had to be cut out with a razor blade by censors and did not make sense. Sometimes they arrived in one piece, but with half the words blacked out. Always they were signed, "From Papa, with love." Otsuka, page 46. The censorship of these letters is one of the most recognizable and blatant forms of authoritarianism, further showing the theme of Orwellian government in Otsuka's book. The inability to freely communicate with their father certainly causes a degree of alienation within the family. Another source of alienation through the story was when the children returned to their family's home and remember the last time they had left and their interaction with their neighbors, recalling that they had seen us leave at the beginning of the war, had peered out through their curtains as we walked down the street with our enormous suitcases. But none of them came out that morning to wish us goodbye or good luck or ask us where we were going to go. We didn't know. None of them waved. "They're afraid," our mother had said. Otsuka, page 83. The alienation of being disregarded by one's neighbors before leaving for an undetermined amount of time is massive, and all caused by fear imposed by the government. Ruling by fear is a key component of an Orwellian regime. Ruling by fear is closely related to ruling from fear, which can also be seen in the book. An American soldier recounts being held in a Japanese prisoner of war camp and says, "We were just numbers to them, mere slaves to the emperor. We didn't have names." 326. Otsuka, page 86. Being a number in the face of the government is a phenomenon that can be seen earlier in the book and is a symbol that recurs throughout the text. At this point, it's from the opposite perspective, Americans being imprisoned in Japanese camps. This experience of the U.S. soldiers invokes fear in them, and fear of the people is exploited by authoritarian governments so that they themselves can implement inhumane practices as long as they can convince the population that it is for their safety, quelling their fear. The final chapter of the novel is the father's rebellion against the Orwellian dystopia. He sarcastically admits in an interrogation to the accusations that the government used to hold him captive by saying, "I'm the slant-eye sniper in the trees. I'm the saboteur in the shrubs. I'm the stranger at your gate. I'm the traitor in your own backyard. I'm your houseboy. I'm your cook. I'm your gardener. And I've been living here, quietly beside you for years, waiting for Tojo to flash me the high sign." Otsuka, page 100. He also exposes the government's way of characterizing him, not as human, but as a member of an ethnicity, and illuminates how unjust his people's treatment is. He then reveals the root cause for the government's inhumane action: fear. He states, "I'm your worst fear. You saw what we did in Manchuria, you remember Nanking, and you can't get Pearl Harbor out of your mind." Otsuka, page 100. His rebellion against the government serves as a closure to the book, with him being the first character to do so. And that concludes this podcast, illustrating Julie Otsuka's portrayal of an authoritarian Orwellian government. The family's experience throughout the novel illustrates the nefarious methods of this form of governance, and in the final chapter serves as rebellion against it. Futile within the story, but useful in reality outside the book. This is a warning to the reader about authoritarian governments, as were Orwell's works. Both authors attempt to prevent these sorts of governments by alerting readers so that they can recognize the signs when they first start being seen.